often known as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, was a finalist of the new Seven Wonders of the World. Today on Travel Explore Celebrate Life, we are going to talk about the iconic Sydney Opera House. So, Neela, I think a good way to start this episode would be to first talk about Australia. Australia has been closed to tourists for a long, long time. What's the status right now? Can people start traveling? Because getting a visa is also quicker than most other countries. Tell us about that.
Neil, I'm so excited to be sharing this today. Yes, Australia is open and open for travel. So, finally you can go down under and have that great holiday that you've been planning for. And one of the very, very simple, the visa procedure is not too complicated. If you have everything together, you can apply for a visa. And I'm really pleased to hear that recently we've been following up with news from the Australian consulate. And in spite of having a very big backlog, like obviously, right, 2 years it's been closed, a lot of people had applied. So they are really trying to clear that. But I've had news that within a week, people have been getting their visa, sometimes even within 2 or 3 days. So I must say, they're really efficient and it's going great guns. So, yes, you can start dreaming of that Australian holiday you've been waiting for. And I'll tell you why we should go in May if you can. It'll be a great, great time to be there as well. So, yeah, let's go to Australia.
Great. A trip down under is definitely on the cards this year. So let's come back to the Opera House. Let's start with a seemingly dumb question, but I still want to cover it on this episode. Where is the Opera House?
So, Neil, the Opera House is, of course, if we can say it like that, it is in Sydney. It is in what is known as the Bennelong Harbour, like the Sydney Harbour or Bennelong Point, I would say. And this was actually named after Woollera Ware Bennelong, who was, the indigenous people of Australia were there right much before the Europeans and the other settlers came in. So, to honor him, a senior Eora man, they named the point as Benelong Point, and this is exactly where the Sydney Opera House is, not very far from the Harbour Bridge. So you have two of the most iconic structures of not just Sydney but Australia all in one place.
So, it's often termed as one of the masterpieces of the 20th century. It is a performing arts center. You can go for operas there and everything. So, Sunila, let's just spend some time discussing the Opera House in general. Talk
Mhm.
about the building. Let's describe it a little bit because multiple performances take place over here. It is said that about 1,500 annual performances take place. It is attended by 1.2 million people. And there are three resident companies that actually take care of the performances. One is Opera Australia, the other one is the Sydney Theatre Company, and then the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. So tell me a little bit about it. What happens here? Tell me a little bit about the building because there are so many unique things about the building which you can't just see from a photograph. Once you go closer and you're like, oh wow, it is something like this. So tell us a little bit about the Opera House.
Yes, Neil, you mentioned the performances, and it's amazing that so many performances take place there. I mean, I think it's a dream for many people. It's definitely a bucket list item to be able to see at least one performance inside the opera house. And once you visit it, that's the first thing on your mind, that when can I come and see a performance here? And all kinds of performances, right? So you have theater, you have opera, you have comedy, stand-up comedy, all kinds of things. But the first ever performance, they say, was by Paul Robeson, who actually climbed the scaffolding, and he sang Old Man River for the construction workers as they ate their lunch. So they say that of course was the first performance of the Sydney Opera House. One thing to note is, actually when you look at it, we think that it's one building when we see it from far, but it's actually three buildings in total out there. And when we talk of that, there are different theaters inside. So you have the major hall, you have the minor hall, you have the dramatic center, you have a creativity center which has just been renovated. The minor hall, also known as the John Sutherland Hall, is also there, which is mainly for opera. And the major hall, the bigger hall, is for concerts. It's actually under renovation and should reopen now. So it's the first big renovation after almost 50 years after which it was built. Like, it opened in 1973. And it's the first time that they're doing all these renovations. So just imagine the acoustics when it opens. It's going to be so amazing. So if you can, definitely catch a concert out there. It should open the mid of 2022. So this year, I think they've put the last 2 years to good use. But for the rest of it, yes, Sydney Opera House is open. You can go there, visit there. And I think, Neil, going ahead, maybe we should talk of who built it, how it was designed, and how it came into being, right? Because it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And I think worldwide, when you think of monuments that you can identify quickly for the country as well, an icon for the country, the Opera House stands out. So let's get into how it was built now.
So let's definitely get into that. But I want to spend 2 minutes talking about the actual concert halls and everything. So, like you mentioned, there is the main concert hall, which
Yeah.
holds approximately 2,679 seats and is the home of the famous Sydney Symphony Orchestra. And it is used by a large number of other concert presenters also. But it contains something unique. It's the Sydney Opera House Grand Organ, the largest mechanical tracker action organ in the world with over 10,000 pipes. So that's the main hall. Then, like you said, there's the Joan Sutherland Theatre, which has 1,507 seats and home to Opera Australia and the Australian Ballet. Until 17th October 2012, it was actually known as the Opera Theatre, and now it's called the Joan Sutherland Theatre. In addition to that, there's the Drama Theatre with 544 seats and is used by the Sydney Theatre Company. There's a playhouse, which is like an end stage theater with 98 seats. There's a studio, which is a flexible space with 280 seats.
Wow.
There's also the Utsin room. Now you're going to tell us what's the significance of Utsin, which is a multi-purpose venue for parties, corporate functions, small productions. There's a recording studio. There's the outdoor forecourt, which is a flexible open-air venue with a wide range of configuration options. And then there are different other areas where there are a few shops. There is the opera kitchen, there is the opera bar, there are a few retail shops, cafes, all of these things. But why am I telling you all of this? I'm just telling you all of this because I read a very interesting fact this morning. And in a photo, the opera house seems rather small, or it seems rather compact, because with the harbor bridge in the backdrop, the opera house seems rather small.
Yeah.
But not many people know that the site of the opera house is so big that 7 Airbus A380s can stand wing to wing on that particular site. And when I first read that, I was like, that is just not possible. But I did fact check it with other websites, and many claim that yes, it is so big that 7 A380s can stand wing to wing on the opera house site. So now imagine how big the harbor bridge is. So that was quite unique. But without wasting any time, let's come to who built it, how it was built, and more on how the building has been structured.
I would love to share that. But like you mentioned, all these amazing things that happened inside, and it is the home of the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. Another amazing fact is that, when the orchestra is performing in the concert hall, they had to ensure that the temperature was exactly at 22.5 degrees so that all the instruments stay in tune, because temperature and humidity they are like, it makes so much difference to musical instruments, and the music may not be the same if the temperature is not maintained. So one of the things they had to really worry about was maintaining the temperature at that point. And the other thing was, you mentioned Joan Sutherland Hall. So the one of the trivia, like one interesting fact is that, after during the 1980s, they had to actually put in a net there, because one of the operas that happened, like opera Boris Godunov, it involved live chickens, and during the opera, one of the chickens actually landed on one of the performers. So they had to put in a net to prevent that from happening ahead. And by the way, they also have an opera dedicated to the Sydney Opera House. So a few years back, they made an entire opera about how it was created, because the whole creation story is nothing less than, it's like an opera story with all kinds of drama involved in it as well. So yeah, you mentioned how the construction happened. And the construction, actually, it took place as a contest. So the Premier of Australia at that point, Joseph Cahill, he decided that we needed something in the country, and that would really stand out. And they had a contest, and I think they had more than some 233 designs were submitted. Um, and then it was won by the Danish architect. And you mentioned the Utzon room. So Jon Utzon from Denmark, he was announced the winner, and he got £5,000 for his design. This competition was held in 1956. The design that came in was actually very simple. So it was really more like a sketch, like just a sketch that he had given out. But I think it really stood out, and we are so thankful that he actually designed it today, right? And that's how he won it. And then they started the construction there, Neil. So you know how long it is taken. He said 4 years, but it took more than 14 years to build it.
Well, it's often said, right, like that the Sydney Opera House seems like a masterpiece right now, but there were so many mistakes made. There were so many, like, they went over budget like crazy. They like underestimated the time it would take and a whole lot. But one thing you missed out is that like Jorn Utzon, his design was submitted for this competition. And then at the start, it was actually rejected. So 30 designs were rejected. And there was like this Finnish American architect. His name was, I don't know whether I'm pronouncing it right, but it's Eero Saarinen. And he actually rescued it from the final cutoff if 30 rejects. And that's how the design came about. But I also remember you telling me that, okay, you just mentioned that the design was not the design that is the Opera House today. Over a period of time, he like got more inspiration from certain things, and that's what led to the Opera House, right? So tell me about that.
Yeah, Neil, so you're absolutely right. They actually rejected the design. And I think one of the reasons was because he didn't really go into specifics. He didn't give them any specific. It's more like inspiration striking him that it should look like this. He drew a sketch, and that was given. Of course, later they selected it. They called him on board, and he started the designing of the Opera House. They estimated it would cost something like 7 million Australian dollars, but in reality, the cost went to something like 102 Australian million dollars at that point. So they started work in 1959, and they actually just completed finally in 1973. Like 20th October 1973 is when the Queen came down and inaugurated it. But what happened was that Jorn Utzon started designing, and a lot of it, I think they started improvising, as they went ahead, because it was of such a big magnitude that it was impossible to have exact designs of how it would come about, what could be done. Like, I read a few notes where they said that a lot of the air conditioning was not done properly. And the way they designed it, or the way they built it, was that they created the base first. So the base was created first. Next came the sails that sit on top, the sail shape that we see, which is so iconic. And finally, they built the concert halls inside. But the problem was that while they were building these sails from top, they had already constructed the support structures that you need inside, the columns to support the roof. But because it was a very difficult design, and really a piece of engineering marvel, as we call it. And finally, when they managed to get the sails, the support columns were too weak to support it. So they had to take it down completely and rebuild. So obviously, all of this caused a lot of time and money. Also, what happened in Australia was that the government changed, and you know what happens when the government changes, that you rethink again. And the Liberal Party, which came in, was not for this project. In fact, when the project started itself, they tried to get a lot of public popularity to support the project, and a lot of the funding came from a state lottery. Now, when the government changed, they said finish it fast, finish it quick, make it fast. And they cut down the funding quite a lot. In fact, they did not pay a lot of construction workers. They did not even pay Jon Utzon at the end, so he didn't really get a lot of debt, and they had a falling out, and he left the project, and then it was completed later on by someone else. And the sad part is that he never really could come and see the completed project himself, though he won a prize for it, but he could not see the completed project. And one of the most difficult things, and I think really interesting part for me, was what they say is it was very difficult to create the sails as they see it, right? And he was wondering, how do I design it? And apparently, when he was eating an orange and he was peeling an orange, he got the idea that if I make the sails out of the same circle and cut them apart, it is so easy to do it. And that's how he went about designing it. And there we have a masterpiece completed by someone else 10 years hence. But yeah, I mean, he didn't see it. That's quite sad, I think.
Yeah, that's quite sad. And I don't know, like it's always a thing, right? A new government comes, it's not their project, they are going to do it. But now, when we visit the opera house, I wanted to ask you, for us, when we look at photos or anything, it seems white, but it's not actually white, right? What is that thing that you were mentioning?
Neil, it's amazing. Like, I remember when I was there, and I really recommend that. I have seen it twice or thrice from inside. So there are different ways to see the opera house. You can just walk in; it's free to go there. You can have a look. You can come back, but take a guided tour, and that's what we do with Mia World also on a lot of our tours where we actually visit it from inside. I was there, and I think twice I had the opportunity to do it with a guide, and you learn so much more about the architecture history, and with a nice story to it, it makes so much sense. So I remember standing there, and from far when you look at it, you feel like it's one big white sheet that covers the sails. When you start coming up close, you realize that is not what is happening here. And it's really quite interesting, the story about the tiles of the opera house, because there are more than 1 million tiles up there. And it's not like one big covering, but it is actually small tiles which are put together with grooves in between. And the tiles are not of one color. From far we think it's white, but it's actually white and cream. So it alternates. So you have a cream tile and a white tile. And Jon Knudsen wanted the opera house to really shine and sparkle against the beautiful, blue color of the Sydney Harbor, the water and the sky. Like, if you've noticed, in Australia, the sky seems more blue than it does anywhere else. It's amazing, the Australian sky and the waters. So to stand out against that, it was his wish that the tiles would really sparkle. And how do you achieve that, right? How do you do it? So ultimately, he found the answer in Japan, like the Japanese ceramic. It has a little bit of a coarseness, and it has a granular texture. So he decided to take that because he didn't want something very shiny and glossy, but which would glare, but something that would shine and sparkle, not just glossy sparkle. And finally, they decided to go in with the Japanese style of making ceramics. And this Japanese style was made by a Swedish company, Hagenas, who made the tiles for them in Australia. And that is how, what came to birth was the Sydney tile. And this is some 120 millimeter square made from clay, and it actually has a crushed stone in it. So this makes the tile very, very, very unique. And actually, that gives it its amazing color and amazing structure that you see today. So it's not just white, you're right, it's white and cream tiles alternating. And definitely, when you go up next to the opera house, stand there, take a close-up view, and have a look at the tiles. It's amazing.
You have a great amount of knowledge about Australia, and I just remembered that the ambassador of Australia had awarded you with one prize, right? What was that?
Yes, Neil. So for 2 years, I was the Aussie Specialist Ambassador for India, as they call it. So you have, within travel agents, you can become an Australia specialist. So you can be a Aussie Specialist agent. And we had a contest, and you had to talk about Australia. You can see I am really passionate, and they liked what I said. So I was awarded as the Aussie Specialist Ambassador for Australia from India. And we actually went down to Australia. It was fun. We did some videos, we shot a few things, so people could come back and have a look at that. And whenever there's a chance, I talk about Australia.
I think we used the pandemic as a company, as Veena World also well, right? Because I think we had the most Aussie specialists in India,
Yes.
right? What was the number at last count?
So as a joke, we told them, why don't we take a challenge, right? And any company would say 10, 12, 15. And in fact, it was Sudhir Patil who said, why not have 500 Aussie specialists? And I said, okay, that seems a little difficult, but we'll do it. And we are more than 500 Aussie specialists in Veena World, Neil. So
I think
that's
that's
something
that's
to say.
I think in terms of sheer number, Veena World would have the highest number of Aussie specialists planning holidays for people to go to Australia. So that's a great one. Coming back to the Opera House as we want to end the episode. So Neela, now the Opera House is also often known as the biggest billboard that Sydney has.
Yes.
And many companies or many events have started using that as a billboard, right?
Yes, Neil, a lot of things are reflected onto the opera house. Many companies would use that also, but the opera house themselves, right now until April, are doing something what is known as the lighting of the sails. So the sails, there's a projection onto it, and honoring the First Nations, which is the indigenous people who live there. There is a projection right now called Badu Gili or Wonder Woman, and it's made by those 6 female First Nations artists, and all that is projected every day for 6 minutes in the evening, 9:30 and 10. And I said I'll mention that there would be a reason to go soon to Sydney, and that is to see Vivid Sydney, which will take place from 27th May to about 18th June. And this is when Sydney comes alive. It is amazing. So there are a lot of light installations across the city, around the harbor, on the opera house. You will see amazing light installations everywhere, performances, a lot of things to do, and you can really party all night if you want to out there. So Vivid Sydney is something that we should definitely not miss. And yes, the sales, they are so amazing that it's by I would say in the day, it's like you mentioned, you see the white sails, and go back in the night and see the projection, because where else can you get a bigger screen than the Sydney Opera House?
That's true. Well, I think that's it, Sunila. The Opera House in Sydney is open to tourists, and I think something on your bucket list should always be to go and watch either an opera or a symphony orchestra over there, because it is so famous. How would you like to end it?
One suggestion I have for people who really love that area, go into the Rocks area and see the Sydney Opera House from there. Take a cruise on the Showboat Sydney Cruises. Again, you have a great view of the Sydney Opera House. And for those who want to wake up to this view, who want to sit in their room, because I remember one of our guests, Neil, wanted to celebrate the 25th wedding anniversary, and we booked the Park Hyatt for them, which is right where the Sydney Harbour Bridge starts. And from your room, you have a view of the Harbour Bridge and the Sydney Opera House. So you wake up to that beautiful view and have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful stay there. So definitely try and put that in if you can.
You were once sitting on the rocks, and you also had Sunil Gavaskar with you having
Yes,
ice cream, right?
yes,
Like,
yes.
tell
That
us that
was
story to end the episode.
unforgettable moment for me. We were there with a mice group, like Veena does our corporate groups as well, and we actually had arranged an event for the Marathi film industry, and we'd taken a lot of the Marathi film industry stars to Sydney, and Mr. Sunil Gavaskar was the chief guest out there. And by evening, he said, "Can we do something?" Because of course he's been to Australia so many times, right? So a few of us said we are honored, like we could take you out for, and he said, "Can we go have ice cream somewhere?" So we said, yes, why not? And we went to the Rocks area, and looking at the Sydney Opera House, I had ice cream with Sunil Gavaskar. So that's a story I will always remember. And he was so generous and kind, and telling us stories about everything and his matches in Australia. It was a beautiful, unforgettable evening for me.
That's awesome. I think that's an apt way to end the Sydney Opera House, because Australia is connected to India through Bollywood, but more importantly through cricket. And that is what we as Indians like think of Australia when we think of Australia first. But guys, Australia is open. Thanks for listening to this episode of Travel, Explore, Celebrate Life. Next week, we'll see you with something more interesting, something not in the southern hemisphere, but in the northern hemisphere. Stay tuned and keep sharing your feedback. Keep listening to Travel, Explore, Celebrate Life. This is Neil and Sunila signing off from Veena World. Goodbye.